It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020, and this is an update on current events in China and the Three Gorges Dam. We have 4 pieces of information to cover today, including 5 charts show how much the US and Chinese economies depend on each other. Also, courtesy of the Global Times, China experiences 21 large-scale floods in 2020, setting historical record. Next, we'll have a look at the live stream and the water level at the Three Gorges Dam. We also have some new tweets. Let's hop into it. And a brief caveat before today's video. While researching for these reports, I come across information from various sources. Just because I decide to include a piece of information doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with it. I like to let you decide for yourself. Moving on. And this is courtesy of CNBC. 5 charts show how much the US and Chinese economies depend on each other. As the rivalry between the US and China intensifies, investors and analysts are increasingly worried that the two economies will grow more distant from each other, a development that would make it harder for companies to operate on the international stage. There have been signs that the world's top 2 economies have started to go their separate ways, some observers said. In recent months, Washington began targeting several major Chinese technology companies, such as smartphone maker Huawei and short video sharing app TikTok's owner ByteDance, making it more difficult for them to do business in the US. Beijing is also expected to place foreign firms on a blacklist that it's developing, known as the Unreliable Entity List. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly raised the possibility of divorcing the two economies. However, various data suggests the process may be quite challenging, at least for now, as the two countries have grown more connected over the last decade. A large part of the relationship between the U.S. and China is centered on trade, with the two countries having been each other's major trading partner for years. Those ties suffered somewhat following a tariff fight that erupted in 2018, but bilateral trade of goods and services still totaled a substantial $636.8 billion last year, according to data by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The trading relationship is an uneven one. In merchandise goods trade, the U.S. imports way more from China than it exports to the Asian country. But the reverse is seen in services trade, in which China buys more from the U.S. than the amount it sells, BEA data showed. Despite touting separation of the two countries, or what some have referred to as decoupling, Trump has sought to push China to purchase more U.S. agricultural products to appease American farmers. Both countries also tried to address their large goods trade imbalance by having China to agree to import more from the U.S. in the so-called Phase 1 trade deal signed earlier this year. But experts said trade between the two countries will likely deteriorate further this year as relations worsen. Beyond direct trade, the U.S. and China have also become increasingly interdependent through rising supply chain linkages over the past decade, Fitch Ratings said in a report last month. Supply chains are a complex network of companies that work together to provide raw materials, intermediate parts, or expertise in order to produce a final product or service that can be consumed either domestically or globally. Some manufacturers within the U.S. were especially reliant on China for intermediate input or final products, said Fitch, citing the OECD data. Those include American producers of textiles, electronics, basic metals, and machinery, the agency said. In China, foreign suppliers made up around 14.2% or 1.4 trillion of total goods and services consumed within its borders in 2015, according to OECD data. The U.S. was also the largest single contributing country to that foreign input, the estimate showed. In contrast, with U.S. reliance on Chinese input in the manufacturing sector, China is much more dependent on American contribution in services, said Fitch. While trade and supply chain interdependency may be difficult to unravel, Investment flows between the US and China have dropped as bilateral tensions escalate. Over the last 3 years, the total value of foreign direct investment and venture capital deals between the countries have been falling, according to data by Rhodium Group. A notable trend is the drop in Chinese acquisitions of US technology assets, the company said in its latest report this month. Meanwhile, US investments in China have been relatively more resilient, it added. Thank you for watching this video. If you're finding it informative, please consider giving the channel a subscribe. And this comes courtesy of the Global Times. China experiences 21 large-scale floods in 2020, setting historical record. China has experienced 21 numbered floods so far in 2020, 1.6 times more than that of previous years, hitting a historical record since 1998. The floods occurred in the 6 main river basins in China, including the Yangtze and Yellow River. A total of 833 rivers in China have gone above warning levels, 80% more than in the same period last year, said China's Ministry of Water Resources in a statement on Tuesday. Among them, 267 rivers were over the safety level, and 77 reached historical record highs. In 2020, the national average rainfall reached 616 millimeters, 13% more than the same period of the previous year, and the second highest since 1961. Moderate to heavy is is still expected in the next 3 days in some parts of China's western and southern areas, with torrential rain in some cities in southwest China's Guizhou, Yunnan, and Sichuan provinces. Water levels in some major rivers in northeast China are still over the limit or warning lines. The ministry and other authorities vowed to continue conducting solid flood control work as the country has now entered the late-stage flood season. Now it's time to check in on the live stream and the water level at the Three Gorges Dam. And our last piece of information is a series of interesting tweets. And I think that's a good place to wrap up today's video. I hope that you found it informative, and check back soon for more content.